So let me ask you, have you ever heard of the Mandela effect? Anybody in here know what the Mandela effect is? It is a phenomenon where people remember things that are not historically accurate. The Mandela effect is when we, usually not just an individual, but a group of people, seem to remember things not quite the way they truly happened. For example, Nelson Mandela, some people have in their mind that Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 1980s. But he didn't. He actually died in 2013. It's this effect, this Mandela effect, is that we sometimes remember things differently than how they actually happened. Let me give you a few other examples that you may not realize. For example, did you know that Looney Tunes is spelled Tunes, not Toons? Did you know that Fruit Loops, yes, those Fruit Loops, on the box, it's always been spelled F-R-O-O-T, not F-R-U-I-T. I got another great example. Mona Lisa's smiling, right? But if you look at her picture, it's not really a smile. Some people think that Mona Lisa is really smiling. What about this? How do you spell Febreze? F-E-B-R-E-E-Z. Look at the bottle. Next time you got it, it's F-R-E-B-R-E-Z-E. Yes, yes. Now, I've got another Mandela effect that I bet Laurie can get. I don't know if the rest of us can. But tell me, what color is chartreuse? What color is it? For the longest time, and I can't be the only one, I thought it was like a pink, like a magenta. It's green. It's a kind of green. I was wrong too. It's called the Mandela effect. Sometimes we remember things and it's not true. That's not how it truly was or truly is. A very famous one for my generation is how you spell Berenstain Bears. You remember the books? People remember the name differently. Berenstain Bears. Berenstain Bears. Which one is it? I'll let you go figure that out. It's called the Mandela effect, that we do not remember. Two more examples actually. One more example. Forrest Gump. What's the great line from the movie? The actual line is, life was like a box of chocolates. I hate to burst your bubble. And then, because today the title of the sermon is about praising God, singing songs of praise, I'm going to burst one more bubble. You remember that song by Queen, by Freddie Mercury, We Are the Champions? Really great song for Palm Sunday, by the way. You know how it ends? We are the champions of the world? He never says that. He never says of the world. All of us collectively have remembered that song in our own way. It's called the Mandela effect. We remember things differently than how they actually happened. Go back and listen to We Are the Champions. He doesn't say we are the champions of the world. He just says we're the champions. No matter how you remember it, Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem included Peter. Today, Peter is a part of the crowd, and so are we. We are a part of this crowd on Palm Sunday. I wonder how we remember this event happening. Will we shout praises? Will we stand back and watch what happens? Are we going to be at the front, waving palm branches? Maybe today it'd be good for us to remember Peter's journey, to think about how far we've come with him. To remember that Jesus' journey with Peter began with this miracle of a catch of fish, and Peter dropped his nets and followed Jesus. Jesus invited Peter to walk on water, and he did. But as he began sinking, he clung to Jesus for his salvation. Peter declared his faith in Jesus, called him the Messiah, the Son of the living God, and then promptly was invited to get behind Jesus and to stay out of his way. Peter asked questions about forgiveness and learned about God's expansive grace. As Jesus led the disciples into Jerusalem, it's not just the disciples who are declaring Jesus as King of Israel. It is also the crowds. The crowds join in. They sing praises to Jesus. They say, Hosanna, which, by the way, means save us. And they sing Psalm 118, which is a song of victory. Their singing should surprise everyone. Should surprise us. It should surprise the disciples. It doesn't surprise Jesus because their singing is subversive, it's courageous, it's contagious. Their singing is a contrast between how people talked about Caesar and how this day people talk about Jesus, how they sing about Jesus. See, when people talked about Caesar, they referred to him, they sang about him, they talked about how Caesar made things better. How Caesar was the King of Kings. How Caesar was the Lord of Lords. How Caesar brought peace. But on this day, people take all those songs, all of that adoration for their emperor, and they use those words to talk about Jesus. Should we get confused? Jesus on Palm Sunday is clear in his messaging. Do not be afraid. Your king is coming, seated on a donkey's colt. Doesn't that give you a whole lot of hope? Doesn't that just fill you with a whole lot of celebration? Woohoo! Jesus knows how to ride a donkey. Not a lot of people ride donkeys unless you're from the country, you know what I mean? Horses are where it's at. Could you imagine if Jesus came into Pensacola driving a Pinto? Do people drive Pintos anymore? I don't even think they make them anymore. But you know what I'm talking about. Jesus comes in riding on a donkey. Verse 15 should steady us in our confusion. No matter how we remember his triumphant entry into Jerusalem, no matter how we think about the events of this week, Jesus lives in Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9, that talks about this one coming in the name of the Lord, coming riding on a donkey, on a young donkey. Verse 13, the palm branches symbolize victory and triumph. The donkey doesn't quite make sense, but the palm branches do, and the songs do. Everybody there, the crowds look at Jesus and they understand that Jesus is coming to Jerusalem because he is a national hero. This guy is going to change things. The hope, of course, on Palm Sunday is that Jesus is going to restore God's kingdom in their nation. Jesus is going to make Israel Israel again. That Jesus is going to do what nobody else has been able to do and is being able to free them from Rome, from their oppressors. He's come to set Israel right. But what Jesus has been teaching the disciples doesn't quite line up with what people hoped for and expected in Jesus. It doesn't quite connect. In fact, the rest of the week doesn't quite connect, does it? It seems almost silly to me that we call today Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem, this Palm Sunday where we celebrate Jesus showing up in power, and then what happens? Jesus submits to death. Death on a cross. I don't know about you, but I like my conquering heroes to actually conquer something. I'm sure there were more than a few people in Jerusalem who on Palm Sunday was singing Jesus' praises, saying Hosanna, waving palm branches, and then a month later, they looked back and they said, what a bust. Who is that guy that came in here to stir things up? What happened to that guy? Oh, he died? Well, when's the next parade? The crowd, like Jesus, like Peter declaring Jesus as the Messiah, the crowd, like Peter, not like Jesus, the crowd, like Peter, misunderstands the nature and purpose of Jesus' power. We will see the fullness of Jesus' power soon. In a week, as a matter of fact. But Peter is still among the crowd, still enjoying the moment, even if he doesn't understand why this is happening. Sometimes following Jesus can be a little bit confusing. But who doesn't like a good parade, right? Who doesn't love it when there's lights and when there's people waving palm branches, when people are singing good songs? I happen to know one such individual who can get a little confused about things. Y'all have heard me talk about my dog, Scout, before. I love Scout. Scout's a rescue. And one time in Birmingham, we went to a parade. It was the We Love Homewood parade. It was just a community parade, nothing crazy. But because it was a community parade, a civic parade, they had the marching band, they had the fire trucks. And Scout, remember I said she's a rescue? This parade is going by. Here we are, and we love Scout. We still love Scout. We love Scout, and we take good care of Scout, and we try to make sure that she's well fed and we're well cared for. But somebody in Scout's past was mean to her. And when she heard those drums, she could not stay where she was. When she heard that fire truck, it was enough. And I left the place with the dog. I cared enough about Scout, I had to take her away. She didn't see the fun of the parade. She didn't appreciate all that Homewood had to offer. It was a hard moment for her. She was confused. You know, sometimes when God shows up, it isn't because God enjoys seeing us confused. It isn't because God enjoys seeing us in pain. It isn't because God really wants to say, I told you so. Sometimes we don't get it because we simply can't comprehend how great our God is. In verse 16, John's gospel tells us that the disciples did not understand these things at first. The triumphant entry of Jesus is confusing for them, especially because of the things that they've seen in ministry, the stuff that they've talked about. Even Peter himself had to get in line behind Jesus and follow him because what a Messiah looks like is different for Jesus than for Peter. Today, the kingship of Jesus has not been realized yet. He still has to be rejected. He still has to be arrested. He still has to be tried, crucified, resurrected, and still ascend to the Father. This is why in verse 16, John's gospel is very clear that the disciples remembered this moment after. And suddenly the image of that day looked a whole lot different than it did before the resurrection. Can I let you in on one of God's great tricks? We can't rewrite the past, but we can remember them differently. We cannot rewrite the past, but we can remember it differently. One of the wonderful realities of the Palm Sunday is that we can look back to when Jesus entered into Jerusalem and we can see Jesus' triumph. We can think differently about our past. Because we cannot rewrite the past, because it is set in stone, because it is what it is, God allows us to remember things differently. How, then, can the church celebrate Palm Sunday? And how can this be a way for us to reflect, to remember? When the church celebrates Palm Sunday, we sing, Hosanna, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Today is not about participating in a victory march. Palm Sunday is not another excuse to have a parade. It is rather a moment for us to reflect on who Jesus is. The disciples will remember. They will reflect on the past in light of the resurrection with the aid of the Spirit. The fourth evangelist, John, affirms that it's only when one consciously and intentionally engages in such reflection that the full truth of Jesus can be grasped. What do you need to remember differently? Who cares if you can't spell Fruit Loops correctly? Nobody. You can be forgiven such a slight. It's not Cheez-Its, by the way, it's Cheez-It. Look at the box. But my bet is that on Palm Sunday, Jesus is not interested in rewriting these small little slights where we've forgotten something and we can be like, oh, that's kind of cute. Jesus is interested in helping us remember our past differently. To remember ourselves differently. What do you need to remember differently on this Palm Sunday? Where can we welcome Jesus as King, as Savior? My friends, we've got to get past this idea that our faith is supposed to be surface level, that it's only for an hour on Sunday, that our faith is just something that we take care of when we think about it. Our faith is something that infuses every moment of our lives, that goes beyond even our present, that goes beyond our hopes for the future. It even changes how we think about the past. Who are you? It's not who you think. Today is about remembering that Jesus is triumphant. He is King of Kings, Lord of Lords, and He wants to save us. He wants to rewrite how we think about our past. And we can do that. Now, it's a lot. In fact, I don't even think today we can imagine what that looks like. What if we give it a week? Can we do that? Can we give it a week? Can we allow God to move in Jerusalem for Jesus and us to think about what is possible? May we stay close to Jesus. May we remember who He said He is. May we remember what He showed us He is. He's not a Caesar. He's not a king. He's not... Let me just say, He is always welcoming, always loving. And maybe He thinks differently about us than we think about ourselves. What do we need to remember differently? Where can we remember Jesus? Today is not about Jesus' triumphant entry into the city of Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, or even into Rome, or even Jerusalem. It is about Jesus' triumphant entry into our hearts, His triumphant entry into where death lives. Today we're invited to see things differently, as Peter was. And as we are. And unfortunately, to do that, it means that we have to give something to Jesus. Peter's very faith, his very understanding of himself and who he is would be shaken to the core this week. But on the other side of death, Jesus brings resurrection. Hosanna. When we say that, I'm not sure we fully appreciate what that means. So I've told you before that, I've told the story, I don't know if anybody remembers it. I've told the story of how I served a church where once, on fifth Sundays, what we would do is we'd have a singing in the community. And we all get together and we would sing. Each church would do a song. And it was a beautiful, wonderful moment where the community was together in Jesus. One time, I may have mentioned, we came ill-prepared. Somebody who was supposed to sing for our church did not come. And so our lay leader came to me and said, Jack, what are we going to do? Our church is supposed to sing. What are we going to do? You know what I think you should do, Jack? I think you should sing. And I said, well, I like singing with people. I don't usually sing by myself. I like people to enjoy being at church. It's my joke. It's my joke. But I did sing. Because there is a song that I carry with me, and I often sing in moments of prayer. And I want to sing it today. Close your eyes for me, please. I sing this song not because I understand it, but because of who Jesus says He is. I sing this song not because of who I am, but because of who He is. I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you. All my soul rejoice. Take joy, my King, in what you hear. May it be a sweet, sweet sound in your ears. Sing with me if you will. I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you. All my soul rejoice. Take joy, my King, in what you hear. May it be a sweet, sweet sound in your ears. One last time for those who need to hear it. I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you. All my soul rejoice. Take joy, my King, in what you hear. May it be a sweet, sweet sound in